Hello, class. Welcome to my lecture on percents, which is chapter 7, section 1. And in this lecture, we're going to be focused on percentages and the applications of percentages. What is a percent? Well, a percent means hundredth or per 100. That is 1% equals to 1 over 100. Percents is very essential when it comes to statistics because it also represents a position and a ranking in a sample or a population. When we take things like the SATs, the ACTs, or some sort of standardized testing, we are using what is called a percentile to compare your score to the entire average. In this video, or rather in this series, we're going to go over some applications of percentages in respect to word problems, to sales tax and discounts, and then also to see if claims are true or false. There are different ways we can work with a percentage. And the other ways we can refer to a percentage is as a decimal or as a fraction. You have to know certain conversion rules when it comes to percentages, fractions, and decimals. For example, to change a percent into a decimal, you will drop the percent sign and move the decimal point 2 places to the left. And then if you want to convert your percent into a fraction, you're going to write a fraction with the percent in the numerator and 100 in the denominator, then simplify or reduce if necessary. For question number 1, we're going to convert each of these percentages, 80%, 37.5%, and 6% into a decimal. And then we're going to convert those percents into a fraction. Let's first convert those percents into a decimal. It says here you want to drop the percent sign and move the decimal point 2 places to the left. When it comes to a whole number, the decimal is not visible. However, you can place your decimal right here. And now we're going to follow the steps because it says here you want to drop the percent sign, which is gone, and then move your decimal point 2 places to the left, which means your new decimal will be right here. So 80% as a decimal is 0.80. Let's write that a little bit better. Let's do the same thing for the next one. 37.5%. To turn it into a decimal, you're going to drop the decimal sign, and then you're going to move the decimal place 2 units to the left. And that's going to be 0.375. And the same thing with 6%. We're going to put a decimal point after that 6, drop the percent sign, and then we're going to move the decimal 2 units to the left. 1, 2. Now, there's an open space right here. We put a 0 here, and we call that a placeholder. So whenever there's an open space, when we move to the right or to the left, we put a 0 there as a placeholder, and that is going to be 0.06. So that is how we convert our decimals or our percentage into decimals. Another way you can do that as well is to divide the percentage by 100. So you can also divide in your calculator the number by 100. And if you divide each of these numbers, 80, 37.5, and 6, by 100 in the calculator, you will get the following decimals. Now, let's convert these percentages into fractions. And to do that, we're going to place a number over 100. So that's going to be 80 over 100. And remember, we must reduce fractions. Therefore, I must find the greatest common factor between 80 and 100. The greatest common factor is the largest number that is divisible by both the numerator and denominator. And the greatest number that is divisible by both the numerator and denominator is 20. So divide the numerator by 20 and my denominator by 20. 80 divided by 20 is 4. And 100 divided by 20 is 5. That is 4/5. We're going to follow the same approach when it comes to 37.5. Because we're going to write that as 37.5 over 100. There's an issue now because there is a decimal in my numerator. And when I have a fraction, I want the numerator and denominator to be whole numbers, not decimals. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to move my decimal 1 unit to the right. And when I move my decimal 1 unit to the right in my numerator, that gives me 375. Remember, whatever I do to my numerator, I must also do to my denominator. I'm going to place a decimal after 100, and I'm going to move my decimal 1 unit to the right. There's an open space right there. I'm going to put a 0 as a placeholder. And that number now becomes 1,000. After that, we want to simplify. We want to find the greatest common factor between 375 and 1,000, a number that's common for both. In this case, because these are both large numbers, I'm going to reduce piece by piece. Both numbers here are divisible by 5. So I'm going to divide 5 from my numerator and 5 from my denominator. 375 divided by 5 is 75. 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. I already knew in this case that dividing by 5 is not the greatest number, but I first want to make my number smaller so I can work with it, and then I can continue the process. This fraction can be reduced even further. Both numbers, 75 and 200, are divisible by 25. So I'm going to divide 25 from the numerator and divide 25 from my denominator. 75 divided by 25 is going to be 3. 200 divided by 25 is 8. My fraction is equal to 3/8 in its reduced form. Last but not least, 6%. 6 over 100. Because both 6 and 100 are even numbers, they both have a greatest common factor of 2. So divide 2 from the top and from the bottom. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 100 divided by 2 is 50. And that fraction can't be reduced any further. So that is how we convert our percent into both fractions and decimals. Before I end this video, we're gonna do one more topic, and that topic consists of converting decimals and fractions into our percentages. So it says here, convert the following into a percentage. The first two numbers are decimals. Now remember, when we converted our percent into a decimal, we drop the percent sign and move the decimal 2 places to the left. But when we convert a decimal into a percentage, we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right and then add back the percent sign. So let's move our decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2. 47.2. And then we're going to add the percent sign. 47.2%. Do the same thing for B. Move the decimal 2 units to the right. 103%. When it comes to a fraction, and you want to turn a fraction into a percentage, you're going to divide the numerator and denominator. So that's going to be 7 divided by 8, which is 0.875. And then you can move the decimal over 2 units to the right, which equals to 87.5%. Same thing for D. Divide the numerator and the denominator. 5 divided by 6. Let's take 3 numbers after the decimal when we round. This is going to be approximately 0.833. Move the decimal 2 units to the right. 83.3%. And I'm using approximately because this number is continuous. And that is how we convert decimals and fractions into a percent. I also want to write down a rule. When converting decimals into a percent, we can multiply the decimal by 100. If you multiply these decimals by 100, whether if you first have them as decimals or you divide the numerator and denominator, multiplying them by 100, we can get the percentages. All right, guys, that is it to the introduction to percentages. Hope that made sense. Hope you understood the process. I'm going to zoom out all the way in case you want to get a quick screenshot. I'll see you soon. Take care.